In this video, I will show you how to make a linear regression model in Google Colab. But before we begin, what exactly is linear regression? Well, in layman's terms, linear regression is simply predicting the value of an output using corresponding input values. And so a very good example of that is this image right here, where, for example, we could be using x values to predict the corresponding y value. Now, for our model, we will be using this CSV file, which is basically just a bunch of data about school students. Here, there's many columns on different aspects of the students, and as you can see, there's a lot of columns, so we won't use all of them, but we will be using 6. First one we'll use is study time, which is just the number of hours that the student has studied. Then we will also use failures, which is if they had failed any exams. We will also use absences. And then, most importantly, we will use G1, G2, and G3. And these columns are just the grades that the student received in each semester. And so using this CSV file and these 6 columns, we will be creating a linear regression model in Google Colab. Now, before we begin, it is very important that you guys import the student mat CSV into the Google Colab environment using this button, because without that, you're gonna get an error. And so I will, in the description, link this dataset for you guys to download. It will download as a zip file, but from that zip file, you only need the student mat CSV. So for this linear regression model, we will first import the necessary libraries. Then we will, use the data to make it usable in our form. Then we will actually make the linear regression model, and lastly, we can test the model. So for this project, we're going to need a few libraries. Firstly, we will import pandas as PD. Then we will import numpy as np. Import sklearn. Then from sklearn, import model selection. Also from sklearn.linear model, we need linear regression. Okay, that should be all the libraries that we need for this project. And yeah, we're good. Now for the data, I will say data is equal to pd.read CSV student mat.csv, and we will separate this by semicolon. And so here we're basically just reading the data set that we have over here and storing it in data. Now our predict variable will be G3. Now what this means is I said we're gonna be using 6 columns, right? Well, I kind of lied. We're only gonna be using 5 of those columns because G3, the 6th column, is what we're actually gonna be predicting using those 5 other columns. So our predict variable for this project is going to be G3. And we can say x is equal to np.array data.drop predict 1. This is our x variable, similar to this x in this image over here. for our y variable, we can do np.array data predict. Now that's our y variable. If we run this, it's giving us an error. Oh, sorry, all of this should be in brackets. Okay, there we go. And so that's all we need to do with the data right now. So now let's actually move on to our linear regression model. First, what we have to do is we have to split this data into train data to train our model, and then test data to test if our model is actually working. So we will do xtrain, xtest, ytrain, ytest is equal to sklearn dot model selection dot train test split, and then x, which is our x variable up here, y, and we can say test size is equal to 0.1. So all this will do is it will create 4 variables. 2 of them are to test the data, and 2 are to train the data. Now we can do linear is equal to sklearn dot linear model dot linear regression. This is going to be our actual regression model that we're going to be using for this project. Now all we do is we do linear.fit to fit the model onto xtrain and ytrain. And so what this is doing is it is practically just training our linear model, which is this one. We can then do predictions is equal to linear dot predict, and this will be test. And so this is the variable for our actual predictions. Let's run this. Okay guys, I found what the problem was, and we actually forgot to include a very important line in this data section. So we forgot to include this line, which is data equals data G1, G2, G3, study time, failures, and absences. And so what this is we're actually defining that we're going to be using these 6 columns when creating our linear regression model. So if we run this should work. Now if we run this model, now this works, right? And so our model is created. Now all that we have to do is go and test our model to see how well it runs. And so now for this, I'm just going to make a for loop. I will say for I in range len predictions. Then I will say print predictions I x test I, and then y test I. And so here we can see that our model has just, we've printed a big block of text, right? So let's actually understand what this means. So predictions I, this first thing that it is printing, it's printing the value that our model has predicted, right? This array over here, this symbolizes the other input values that we gave in. So for example, this 10 could be G1, this other 10 could be G2, this 2, it wouldn't be G3 because that's what we're predicting, it would be study time, right? And so on. And this last value, this was what the actual value was for these input variables. Right, so for this first example, our model predicted 10.02 and the actual value was 10. Here we predicted -0.7, the actual value was 0. Here, for example, we predicted 15.3, the actual value was 15. And so we can see that our model isn't 100% accurate, but it's very, very close to what the actual value is supposed to be. And so in this video, we made a linear regression model using the student data set. And here we can see that our model functions relatively well, and we're satisfied with these results.